Hey, it's John Reed. Guess who I got? I got Brian Sommer once again, the infamous Brian Sommer.
Making trouble every analyst event that I attend.
Yep, we're going to tape a couple podcasts, starting with a review of Acumatica's analyst event. And Brian, what was it we were going to say about this event?
Well, there was just one subject we wanted to talk about, but it's under non-disclosure.
And
well, there was this other big subject we wanted to talk about.
Non-disclosure.
Yeah, it's under non-disclosure too. In fact, several of us analysts were kind of scratching our heads trying to figure out, like, well, what can we talk about? But good news for all your listeners, we did find a number of things we can talk about. So.
Yeah, they have a major release announcement tomorrow, and some of the NDA stuff will get cleared out then, but then some of it were sworn to secrecy for a while. But just in general, the CEO, John Roscoe, who's been around for 3 years now, he described Acumatica as the rambunctious adolescent, I guess, of the cloud ERP market. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, it was words to that effect. Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Is that a fair description, do you think, of?
I think they kind of created a whole new product line. For those of you who are unfamiliar with them, they started off by taking a whole bunch of Microsoft Solomon resellers and some partners and some Great Plains Dynamics kind of partners. And they've been steadily building out a pretty robust business, and they've been taking business away from Sage and others out there in the market as well.
And they've been sort of gleeful, I guess we should say, about the Oracle NetSuite acquisition in a sense, because they're looking at what they call the abandoned mid-market. So they're really happy to see companies like NetSuite get distracted by perhaps upper mid-market pursuits and stuff.
Let's face it, I'm sure you get the same kind of emails that I do, John. We get lots of emails from companies telling us how wonderful it is that a major competitor is being acquired. Yeah. And there's been a lot of email commentary hitting my inbox on that NetSuite Oracle deal.
And the other thing that I think is interesting about Acumatica is that they're rigorous about both multi-tenancy but also flexible deployment. So 70% of the revenues come from public cloud, but you can also do basically the hybrid hyperconvergence cloud. You can do to use the latest buzzwords. You can do your partner can host it for you. There's a few different options. Essentially versions of the Acumatica cloud that you can run, which is fairly intriguing. And then their pricing is not user-based, which is also pretty refreshing. So.
Right. It's kind of I was going to say it's kind of an all-you-can-drink kind of deal, but they do have some add-on modules that do come in, for extra money for those folks in specific vertical spaces, or for some horizontal functionality. There are some add-on charges if you need to invoke that functionality.
Right. And they rely heavily on partners for go-to-market. Their partners sell all their stuff. They don't actually sell directly to customers, and they do a lot of vertical pursuits around functionality, which I guess you're going to get into. So share a few reactions from our day with these folks.
We know they're making a lot of progress on the vertical side of the house, and while we can't really go into a lot of detail on that, they targeted 3 big ones in particular and continue to keep pushing that out there. They also have pretty strong sales. I think about 70% of their sales are in 3 verticals alone, and those are going to be focus areas for the company longer term. But if I could segue, though, I would tell you the additional focus the company clued us in on was how customers and resellers are utilizing new technologies like machine learning technology or artificial intelligence, RFID, and even Internet of Things is already showing up inside product. And I made an observation in the analyst meeting that I thought they'd kind of buried that headline. We didn't hear about that till about 11:30 this morning. And
that was about 3.5 hours in.
Yeah, and I thought that was actually, those were very big points, because while we hear lots of vendors talk about incorporating machine learning and IoT and so forth into their software solutions, I wasn't actually expecting to hear that these folks actually had customers utilizing it.
You want to finish this by campfire, Brian?
Yeah.
We just lost our light, but I can shine a light on. Oh, there we go. Continue along.
Well, I think there was another thing caught. Probably several of us noted, let's say, their user experience or user interface. We know they're working on upgrading it across the line. What we saw on the e-tailing or online retailing component was really nice. I actually pulled up one of their customers' websites online, and it was a very slick, very nice, very consumer-friendly experience.
Yeah, I think some of their back-end screens are not what I would call cutting-edge design. Now, granted, there's a lot of information, but they are doing a UI makeover, I think, as part of the announcement that's happening tomorrow, so we can legitimately say they're still working on that. But I do think it's sort of an interesting sort of contradiction of Acumatica, because they have a huge proliferation of mobile consumption of their software. I'm saying something like about 50%, which is a lot. But I don't tend to think of their UX as certainly their desktop UX as super sexy. I'd like to see a little more sort of, I guess you could say, cutting edge design sensibilities. You look at some of these ERP firms that have involved design agencies and what they do.
Right.
I could see them infusing themselves with a little more design talent, but they are definitely emphasizing the mobile usage, and the stats do back that up. So
let me add to your observation there. The market probably has Acumatica pegged as a solution for like small businesses and some mid-market kinds of firms. And as a result, you would think the screens, the displays that you would see would be a little on what I would say the thin side. And instead, what you see are what I would describe as kind of meaty, chewy, chalk-filled kind of screens. They've got a whole lot of functionality in their system.
Which ties into a key point that the CEO, John Roscoe, made this morning, which is that today's SMBs have the complexity of larger enterprises of 10 years ago. And even like the customer I wrote about, Danforth Pewter, that's basically kind of a crafts store in Vermont, has 1,200 SKUs, So, that's a fair amount of complexity that you have to manage there. And so their software definitely manages that in a way that I would say the interface in the back end seems pretty practical, but I think there's ways they could improve it. But at any rate, the other thing I was going to ask you about was in terms of, I've kind of found it refreshing that they didn't lead off with the standard buzzwords around IoT and, big data and stuff. But I do see your point in the sense that, they had baked that into products. That's different than just talking about, it's cool how much the digital world is changing and stuff. But can you sort of give an example of what impressed you? Was there a particular feature or function that you saw where you were like, wow, that's ahead of where other vendors are? Or?
I would say they're further ahead in kind of turning their product into a developmental platform for partners and others to use at this stage in their evolution.
Right.
Whereas there are a lot of other companies that have built ERP apps, for example, like on the Salesforce platform, Force.com or Force One, whatever. And those firms were taking advantage of a pre-existing platform. I know of other ERP firms that are still tweaking and tuning and their platforms, and they haven't even bothered to open them up. These guys have kind of created a platform, have got people building on it, have got applications out there on it and extensions created, and now they're actually working to find better ways to turn into like creating a store and monetizing the stuff for their partners. So they've made a lot of progress while they built a product line from scratch. And I think that's an important point people are listening to. This isn't some old product that's being slowly retooled. This is a from scratch system.
Right. Which is interesting because a lot of the SaaS products in the ERP space are either, lipstick on a pig type
SaaS
products,
grades,
or they're just acquiring some technical debt after, becoming fairly old SaaS products. So Acumatica has an interesting advantage in terms of building a lot of their functionality with next gen principles firmly in mind. The disadvantage, right, is brand and to some extent functionality depth, though they're certainly making progress in some of those areas.
I thought there was an interesting quote today where someone made a comment about partners. Some of their original partners weren't having the cloud conversation with prospects or existing customers, but then they found out, but their competitors were. And now all of a sudden, all the partners, every one of them is having the cloud conversation with every one of the customers and prospects out there. And that to me marked a signal change in the marketplace, even when you get channel partners who've been reluctant to change their business model and everything else away from an on-premise kind of mindset to a cloud deal. They're doing it because the competition now has forced their hand.
Anything else stood out to you from today's event?
Maybe one other thing. I thought it was interesting that they've now accelerated their release schedule for new enhancements to a bi-weekly format. In the SaaS world or the cloud world, we've seen vendors. I knew one of them. One vendor had 108 releases in 1 year. And many of them, I know some that only have a release every 18 months. With most vendors, I would say having 2 or 3 good-sized releases every single year is kind of more of a norm. The fact they can do it bi-weekly tells me that they've really sped up and are leveraging a lot of tools, and that allows them to get a lot more functionality out the door in record time. And that kind of speaks well. If you're a buyer of software, you want products that are nimble, adaptable, and very quickly updated because the world we live in now, it isn't static and unchanging. It's very dynamic, and you need solutions that move at the speed of business today. That's it.
Well, and you raised a bit of a sticking point there, which is because of their flexible deployment options, the biweekly could put stress on certain partners. And I think it does tie into the long-term view that even though they offer flexible deployment, they really would prefer to run people on the public cloud. They think they can do a better job of delivering value that way. And I think in the long run, if you forecast ahead a few years to Acumatica, I think most of their deployments are going to be public cloud, and this is going to be less of a question. But the customers can choose a long-term option and not get the biweekly updates. Yeah, so there's a choice there.
They are giving customers choice. There's no question about that. But I would agree with your assessment that longer term, and probably a smart bet for any prospective customers listening on this, you really need to look at the public cloud multi-tenant solution. That's going to be your best way to go from a cost perspective longer term. I don't know that I'd want to be like in accounting and always having to wait maybe months or years for my finance upgrade to finally get implemented because it's stuck in a backlog queue that IT can't get to. Whereas on the public cloud, it's a different story altogether.
Yeah, I think the other thing they're going to have some challenges on it, and these are the kind of good problems you want to have, is that they're verticalizing a lot in their functionality and approach, which makes a whole lot of sense. But that also means that a lot of their partners can't come along for that ride because they don't have that vertical expertise, and they're going to have to recruit new partners that do. And then the partners also need to have additional skills in app development and also intellectual property and content that they can share to essentially win the branding and marketing game. So their partners are going to have to go through, I think, in my opinion, a bit of a transformation. And they talked a little bit about how they enable that and help. And for now, I could see that working. But if they continue to grow, that's going to be, I think, one of their biggest things is helping their partners to move along those paths, because that's a lot for a partner to take on.
A lot of partners will need to develop deep expertise in a vertical or two.
Right.
But let's also look at the way customers implement new ERP software. Not everybody takes the big bang approach and will put in manufacturing, distribution, finance, and everything else all at once. It is incredibly high risk to do it. And I think you'll find a lot of the customers will implement finance modules first. And for the reseller that has deep horizontal expertise in finance, that might actually work out just fine for a large number of customers. Yep. But at some point, they may have to pass the baton to a vertical provider who can bring all the other extensions and modules in that are going to make it finish it out.
Sort of the revenge of the accounting firms, right? Because those people get back into the game here.
Could be, particularly if if there's an impetus for changing out the financial applications now, like with one of my favorite subjects, revenue recognition.
Oh, there you go. And they got a 2,000 customer count, which includes 200 from their OEM reseller partners. And I would say that they need to build a lot of momentum. I don't think they're going to run into like Workday and SAP and Oracle as those guys go down market, maybe NetSuite some. But to me, the big elephant in the room is the Dynamics 365 enterprise. It's Microsoft and whatever Microsoft tries to do. And so if they can position themselves strongly against that, then they should be in good shape. But we'll see. Time will tell, right?
Yeah, the faster they get more verticals out, that puts them in a better standing to go against Sage Live, Sage One, Sage whatever, all the Microsoft stuff. Yes, that's the future.
All right. Thanks for the rundown. Appreciate it.